go in order. Susie kind of walked out of the shot. And I'll leave this up on.
Mandy, I got a spot over here for you.
As we're getting set up, I'll just talk a little bit so that the photographers can get their noise level. I'm Eric Leitner, Communications Specialist with the Office of Traffic Safety. Today we're going to hear from Office of Traffic Safety Director Mike Hansen, followed by Lieutenant Mike Lee, and then finally Sergeant Kyle Pilston from Chisago County Sheriff's Office will share his story both as a law enforcement officer and as a crash survivor. There will be time for question at the end if you'd like to ask. When you do, all I ask is that you say your name and which news outlet you're from so that we can follow up with you later if there's any more information needed. But with that, I look at my clock and I'd say we're right about on time. Dan, does the live stream look okay? All right. With that, I will hand it over to Director Mike Hansen.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Hansen, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director for the Department of Public Safety's Office of Traffic Safety. We're meeting here because this bar, like many across the state of Minnesota, are where many people will plan to spend their St. Patrick's Day or at some point be at an establishment like this over the weekend. We want people to have a good time, enjoy yourselves, make the holiday a holiday, but we also want people to be very smart. Know this, if you drive impaired, you will be arrested and there will be consequences for your choice. Let me share a few statistics with you that illustrate why we are focusing on impaired driving this weekend. Last year during the St. Patrick's Day holiday, there were 438 impaired driving arrests in that relatively short period of time. That's far too many bad decisions that were made that affect everybody who was using Minnesota roads at that time. In the last 5 years, there have been 10 fatal crashes that have occurred on the St. Patrick's Day holiday. We want to eliminate that this year. Don't ask yourself at midnight after you've been drinking or using some other impaired substance whether you should in fact make that decision to get behind the wheel and to drive. Make a plan ahead of time, stick to that plan, and have an alternative way to get home if you are impaired. A pocket full of four-leaf clovers are not your get-out-of-jail-free card. If you make that decision, you will pay the price when you wind up in the backseat of a squad car. And along that same line, and a bit more morbid, a bushel full of four-leaf clovers will not keep you out of the morgue in the event the worst-case scenario happens and you're involved in a crash. In 2024, there were 26,932 impaired driving arrests on Minnesota roads. That is completely unacceptable, and all of us should be outraged that that many people made a bad decision to get behind the wheel and to drive impaired. Not getting a DWI is really easy. Make that plan and stick to it. Do not get behind the wheel when you are impaired. This year, let's make St. Patrick's Day a zero fatality weekend. Okay, commit right now to making that plan and having it in place before you go out and you consume alcohol or another substance. You can help save lives on Minnesota roads this weekend by doing several very simple things. If you see somebody who is going to make that fateful decision to get behind the wheel when they shouldn't, help them make a better decision. Find a ride for them or help them find a way to get home safely. If you see a suspected impaired driver on the road and you will recognize what you're seeing, call 911. There is an exception in the hands-free law for your cell phone, but be prepared to tell the dispatcher what road you're on, what direction you're going, the behavior you're witnessing, a vehicle description, a license plate number, as much detail as you can. Law enforcement will be there, they will respond, and they will try and make sure that that trip ends in an arrest and not a crash. Remember, just like drinking alcohol, using cannabis or any cannabis product, or really anything that impairs you, is impaired. Impaired is impaired, and if you're impaired, that can and will result in an impaired driving arrest. So make those good decisions before you get behind the wheel. I wish everybody a safe and happy and great St. Patrick's Day weekend. Let's make it a zero fatality one. Drive carefully, everybody. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Lieutenant Lee.
Thank you, Director Hansen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Mike Lee. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Minnesota State Patrol. We're realistic about how most people spend their St. Patrick's Day, but make no mistake, we are not encouraging people to drink in excess. We are encouraging people to plan a safe ride home, to be safe, and to help save lives. Times like this, I think back to when I responded to a crash when I was a trooper. It was a crash involving two people in one vehicle, a vehicle that was traveling down the highway at a very high rate of speed, that left the roadway, rolled, and ultimately resulted in the death of the passenger. When I left the scene, I had to go to the hospital and tell the driver his passenger had died and he was under arrest for criminal vehicular operation. I later found out that the passenger was his best friend. I immediately felt multiple feelings of frustration and extreme sadness. Sadness for the family that they wouldn't be able to celebrate birthdays, holidays, precious life moments anymore because of a reckless and preventable decision made by the driver. A night out isn't worth ruining by injuring someone or possibly killing somebody or going to jail, being arrested, having a significant amount of fines, possibly losing your license. Please think ahead and drive safely. And just know that there is no safe place to drive impaired. State Patrol, troopers, and also other officers across the state will be engaged in extra DWI enforcement this weekend. It is absolutely unacceptable to think that you can drive impaired. There's so many options out there. There's rideshare, cabs, public transit, or just getting a sober ride home. If you see someone's about to make a bad decision, do something and say something. Be the hero that everyone needs on St. Patrick's Day. And lastly, we're sending this message now because now is the time to plan ahead to get home safely. If you aren't going to be drinking, take the next step. Be a sober ride and offer to help get people home safely. Help us make this St. Patrick's Day a day without impaired driving. I'll turn it over now to Sergeant Kyle Pilston.
Good morning. Thanks for being here this morning. Thank you to Mike Lee, Lieutenant Mike Lee and Mike Hansen for hosting this important press conference. My name is Kyle Pilston. I'm a sergeant with the Chisago County Sheriff's Office. And we also will have deputies and officers from our sheriff's office and local police departments that are going to be doing extra patrols over the St. Patrick's Day weekend for enforcement and looking for impaired drivers. But in addition to enforcement, we also know the importance of educating people on knowing their limits when it comes to drinking. So a couple times a year here in our community, we host an event that we call Learn Your Limits. We do it here at Scooters at the bar that we're at this morning. We've had this event here a couple times, as well as at other local bars in our community. And the whole idea behind a Learn Your Limits event is that we take the tools that we use during a DWI investigation on a traffic stop, and we bring them into a bar in an educational way in order to help people understand the effects of alcohol in their body. So things like the walk and turn test, one-leg stand test, the preliminary breath test. These tools that we use on a traffic stop will bring into a bar in a fun-filled environment where we can have conversations with people and use these tools to help them see the effects of alcohol on their bodies and then make responsible decisions. We've been doing a Learn Your Limits events for the last 3 years here in Chisago County, and it's provided opportunities for us to have conversations with people age ranges from their 20s all the way up until their 70s. There's countless conversations with people and answering questions and having conversations with them about alcohol impairment. This is important to me because I'm not just an advocate of this within law enforcement, but I'm also a crash survivor. On December 4th, 2020, I was on a traffic stop looking for impaired drivers when, ironically, one found me. I was hit by a full-size pickup truck at about 60 miles an hour, driven by someone that was 3 times over the legal limit to drive. Now, I was out of work for about 4 months. The first month after the crash, I had to spend that entire month in a dark room because light and noise was just too painful for my head to be able to handle. Fortunately, I was able to return to work after 4 months, but I still deal with some of the effects from that concussion, from the traumatic brain injury that I was diagnosed with as a result of that crash. So our message to everybody this weekend is that no matter how you plan to celebrate the weekend, make sure you have a plan to only drive sober. Do it for crash survivors, do it for law enforcement and helping us make the roadways more safe, do it for yourself, And remember that before you go out and party, make sure that you have a plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's our planned remarks for today. Does anybody have any questions?
Do you have any, numbers? You don't have to have any numbers, but how does this holiday weekend compare to like New Year's Eve, Halloween? Are they relatively the same, or is, as far as enforcement goes, is this kind of a general deal?
I'll give that to Mike.
Yep. Thanks for the question. Really, all of them are kind of unique in their own way, but St. Patrick's Day kind of has a special place in that we do see, I think, slightly more than when we compare it to like Super Bowl weekend or New Year's. New Year's Eve is typically one of the busier ones, but St. Patrick's Day follows very closely on that.
Also, just number-wise, sorry. Since 2020, Mr. Wilson talked about what happened to him and how scary that was. Number of arrests, they've gone up from 23 to 24, not by a lot, but have you seen them go up since, say, 2020? Are they plateaued? What would the numbers show as far as that goes?
The actual, when we look at the trend lines, you said the exact word that came to my mind, is we plateaued. We're anywhere between 24, 25, 26,000, up to 27,000 arrests every year pretty consistently when I look at the last 5 years. And so, if we look long term, there was a point in time in the early 2000s, we were over 40,000 arrests a year. So we've made progress in the long term, but we need to figure out the next best strategy to get us down below that plateau, that 25,000 plus or minus that we're at. And that really takes everybody making those smart decisions before they go out and sticking to it. As Lieutenant Lee said, there are so many options out there. There really isn't any excuse for anybody to be arrested for impaired driving anymore. You just have to have that plan and stick to it.
All right. Is there anybody else have any questions? Are we all good? All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending, and plan a sober ride. Be safe this weekend. Thank you.